What you're looking at is a normal reef fish. Nothing about it looks sick. Nothing looks injured. It swims fine. It eats fine. But inside its mouth, the tongue is gone. In its place lives something else, a creature with legs, a shell, and a grip strong enough to claim ownership of another animal's body. This is not a horror movie prop. This is not a mutation. This is real biology. And the creature responsible is called Cymothoa exigua. It is one of the only known parasites on Earth that doesn't just live inside its host. It replaces an organ, specifically the tongue. The story usually starts the same way. A fisherman pulls up a reef fish. He opens its mouth to remove the hook, and instead of a tongue, he finds a pale, armored bug staring back at him. When the parasite is removed, the fish begins to suffocate, because without that parasite, it can no longer eat properly. The parasite wasn't visiting, it was functioning. So how does something like this even evolve? As circulation weakens, the tongue begins to shrink. The tissue starves. Muscle breaks down. Eventually, the tongue dies and falls away. Its body presses upward against the roof of the mouth. When the fish eats, the parasite moves with the jaw. It pushes food backward. It mimics the function of the tongue. The fish adapts from the outside. Nothing looks wrong. The fish swims normally. It feeds normally. It grows. But its tongue is gone, and its replacement is alive. This relationship is unsettling because it works. The parasite doesn't kill the host quickly. It doesn't damage vital organs. It doesn't cause immediate infection. The fish survives, and that survival is intentional, because Cymothoa exigua needs its host alive. This parasite is not a hit-and-run killer. It is a tenant. Once installed, it rarely leaves. Inside the mouth, the female parasite begins reproducing. Eggs hatch into new larvae. Some leave the fish to find new hosts. Others stay nearby as males, clinging to gills or mouth walls. A single fish can host a small colony, and this isn't rare. Cymothoa exigua is only the most famous member of this family. It has relatives all over the world. In Australia, similar species replace tongues in threadfin bream. In India, others infest needlefish. In Japan, they target sea bream. Some attach externally, clamping onto heads like armored facehuggers. Others live deep in gill chambers. Same strategy, different address. Over 20 species of tongue-biting isopods have been documented. They infect over 80 fish species. This is not an accident. This is a successful evolutionary design. And here's the part that usually surprises people. These parasites are not malicious. They don't plan. They don't hate. They follow rules written by survival. Over millions of years, any version of this parasite that killed its host too fast went extinct. Only the versions that balanced damage with function survived. Which means what you're seeing isn't cruelty. It's optimization. A creature that figured out how to replace an organ instead of destroying it. A parasite that doesn't just live inside another animal, it becomes part of it. So the next time someone tells you nature is peaceful, balanced, or gentle, remember this. Somewhere in the ocean right now, a fish is swimming peacefully, eating, breathing, living, with an armored crustacean where its tongue used to be. And it has no idea anything is wrong. If you enjoyed this, the next episode goes even deeper. An animal that doesn't replace organs. It replaces your entire sense of safety. And no, it's not extinct. Thanks for watching. When a clownfish colony loses its queen, there's no dramatic ceremony, no flash of color. The change begins quietly, deep inside the breeding male. After the female is gone, an eerie silence falls over their anemone home. The juvenile fish stop growing. The male stops tending to the empty nest. For a reef fish, this inactivity is a death sentence. And this is where nature performs one of its most incredible feats. Within hours, the male's brain starts to rewire itself. This isn't a choice, it's a biological imperative. The social structure has collapsed, and nature rushes to fill the void. In clownfish society, dominance is chemistry. When the top spot opens up, the male's hormones begin to shift. Androgen levels plummet, and estrogen levels rise. His testes don't vanish overnight, but they slowly start to shut down, tissue by tissue, reorganizing themselves into functioning ovaries. This transformation is irreversible. It's a one-way street. Once a clownfish becomes female, there is no going back. What's fascinating is that this change isn't triggered by age or genetics. It's triggered by social pressure. The reef itself decides who you are. As the transformation progresses, the fish begins to grow. Female clownfish are always the largest and most dominant in the group, so growth hormones surge, muscle mass changes, and even behavior shifts. The once cautious, submissive male becomes assertive and territorial. The juveniles sense this change immediately. They keep their distance, offering submission without a single fight. The hierarchy rebuilds itself seamlessly. Now, the colony needs a new breeding male. This role doesn't go to just anyone. It's filled by the largest juvenile, the one closest in size to the former male. As the new female grows, this juvenile's growth also accelerates, but only enough to secure the number 2 spot. He can't challenge her. If he grows too quickly, the new female will see him as a rival and attack. So, he actually regulates his own growth to avoid conflict. In a clownfish colony, everyone knows their place. This system isn't cruel. It's brutally efficient. On a crowded reef, where predators are everywhere, clownfish can't afford the chaos of power struggles. They can't wait for a new female to wander in from the vast ocean. Their anemone is both a home and a prison leaving. It means certain death. So, instead of searching for a replacement, they simply become one. This isn't a rare mutation. It's the default plan for survival, and it's universal across all species of clownfish. The hierarchy is always the same: one dominant female, one breeding male, and several non-breeding juveniles waiting in the wings. In fact, every single clownfish starts its life as a male. The powerful queen you see ruling the anemone wasn't born that way. She earned her position by surviving, by waiting patiently, and when her moment came, her body completely rewrote its own biology. This incredible strategy exists for one simple reason: reefs are unstable. Storms can destroy coral, predators can wipe out entire colonies, and temperature shifts can kill anemones overnight. In that chaos, clownfish don't rely on luck, they rely on certainty. Their system ensures that as long as just 2 fish remain alive, the colony can continue. If you lose the female, the male becomes one. If you lose the male, a juvenile steps up. The line of succession never breaks. This is how clownfish have survived for millions of years, while countless other species vanished. They don't just adapt to their environment, they adapt to loss. This biological reality completely changes how you see a movie like Finding Nemo in the film. Marlin's grief and fear are emotionally resonant, but biologically, they're inaccurate. A real clownfish wouldn't spiral into despair. He would become responsible. He would become dominant. He would become the future of the colony. Nemo wouldn't have grown up with an overprotective father. He would have grown up under the rule of his father, who had become the new queen. That changes everything, doesn't it? The reef doesn't pause for trauma, it reorganizes, and it happens unsettlingly fast. There's no mourning period, no hesitation. Evolution doesn't care about feelings, it cares about survival. And the survival of the clownfish isn't built on strength or speed. It's built on radical flexibility. They don't fight predators head-on or outrun danger. They change who they are at a fundamental level, and they're not entirely alone. Other fish, like wrasses and groupers, also change sex based on social cues. But the clownfish system is cleaner, more absolute. Once you understand it, the anemone stops looking like a cute cartoon home. It becomes a biological pressure cooker where rank, hormones, and survival are all locked together. If you're too ambitious, you get attacked. If you're too passive, you never reproduce. Only the patient and the adaptable get to pass on their genes. And maybe that's the real lesson here. It's not just about finding your way home. It's about how nature doesn't reward stability. It rewards those who can become something entirely new when the world demands it. Thanks for watching, and if you found this fascinating, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful world of nature.